Welcome to my writing tips series. This section is on plagiarism, originality, and artificial intelligence. Plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off on one's own. This can involve anything from copying text word for word. This could be misciting a source. This could be copying from the textbook. It could be using another paper that you found online and turning that in. It can even be plagiarism when you are using something like artificial intelligence to generate your papers. Anytime you're not using your own writing that you came up with and information that you studied, you are committing plagiarism. There are many negative effects of plagiarism. It prevents you from learning. It is one example of academic dishonesty. Other examples include cheating and fabrication. It puts your academic career and your transcript at risk, and it is most definitely against your institution's policies. So whether you are at a college, university, or school, there will be policies in place that prohibit plagiarism. Okay, we are again back at the Purdue OWL website. This is the Purdue Online Writing Lab at owl.purdue.edu. And this website gives us some good overviews of what plagiarism is, all right? So I'm just going to read this to you. Plagiarism is using someone else's ideas or words without giving them proper credit. Plagiarism can range from unintentional, like forgetting to include a source in a bibliography, or not citing a source with an in-text citation, for example, or intentional, like buying a paper online, using another writer's ideas as your own, or even these days, using artificial intelligence to write your paper. So, plagiarism is serious in both school and professional settings, all right? You, as a student, can face the consequence of a failing grade, academic probation, expulsion, or even permanent marks on your transcript that indicate you have plagiarized, all right? So if you are wanting a plagiarism overview, owl.purdue.edu is a good resource for you to review what plagiarism is and to find tips about how to not plagiarize. And I will talk about those in the next slide. Okay, there are many ways to stay original and keep originality. A few methods include paraphrasing and summarizing information. You can do this by dictating the information to yourself or explaining it to someone else, and then use that in your writing. Use those explanations. Regardless, you'd also, if you're using information from any source, you need to cite your sources and give credit where credit is due. And I will explain citing sources and in-text citations in a different presentation. Now we are going to look at some best practices to avoid plagiarism. If you are writing in my class, I have probably already given you writing instructions or writing guide that will have tips. But here are a few that I'm going to briefly overview, and you can visit owl.purdue.edu and click on the Avoiding Plagiarism tab to find out more. So reading and note-taking, as well as keeping track of your sources, is a good way. Interviewing and conversing doesn't really apply to our class. Writing paraphrases and summaries, that is a good way. It's a good way to avoid quoting word for word and copying information. However, even if you're getting information from a source, you still need to cite it, even if it's not a direct quote. So keep that in mind. This tip says writing direct quotations. Now, I do not allow direct quotes in my papers because I find that students overuse them. All right, here it says, quote, no more material than necessary. So I would like you to write everything in your own words. Direct quotes are not allowed because students often just end up quoting large sections of text, and you don't want to do that. Okay, So here, another one, a very important: revising, proofreading, and finalizing your paper. So one key point to remember, and this does kind of go back to interviewing and conversing. If you are trying to avoid word for word copying from a source, a good thing to do is to explain the information to yourself and then dictate your information. So that helps you avoid plagiarism. So we have been talking about what plagiarism is, ways to avoid it, and this is a brief overview. I'm going to show you in the next few slides what some examples of plagiarism from the instructor's point of view and what that looks like. Here is one example of what plagiarism looks like from an instructor's point of view when using a program called Safe Assign. Now you can see that this is just a silly example. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog over and over again. That's obviously copied from somewhere, but as you can see, it's pretty easy for the instructor to tell that this entire paragraph was copied. Here is another example which isn't quite as straightforward, but still it's very obviously plagiarism. So here we can see that a student has copied from different sources online. So it's looking like they have gone to a couple of different websites. Another example here where the number 2 here, that light purple pinkish color, it was submitted to a university, so this could be from another person's paper, or alternatively, it could be that the person at the university in the original paper copied straight from the text, and then this screen you're seeing here, this text is matching with that student's text, which matches with the textbook. So either way, the person who has submitted this anorexia paper has obviously copied from outside sources, potentially the textbook or potentially other students' papers. And this is very obvious from the instructor's point of view, that plagiarism has occurred. Not only have multiple sources been used, but they haven't been cited either. So those are 2 negatives. Copying word for word from any source and then not citing any of your sources as well. And here we have a more recent and up-to-date with current technology example of plagiarism, where this instructor has discovered a student copying word for word from artificial intelligence. So it could have been something like ChatGPT or something like that, that generated these paragraphs artificially. So this is not written by a human. And there are lots of websites out there that instructors can now use to detect this type of thing. And aside from this being plagiarism, this person is not using their own work at all. There are also no sources cited, and it's very likely that there could be inaccurate information in this generation of text as well. In conclusion, do not waste your time or put your academic career at risk by plagiarizing. Take the time to study your materials, the materials that your instructor has given you, and your assigned materials, and cite your sources. I'll talk more about in-text citations in a different video. Be sure to paraphrase, summarize, and explain the information to yourself in your own words in order to avoid copying word for word from any source. Remember, instructors use many tools to detect plagiarism in your writing.